Alright guys, here we are at the lovely Circuit of Monaco, a crown jewel on the F1 calendar and a place I have really come to love. And that's what I want to start out this video talking about. You have to learn to love Monaco to be fast at Monaco. That's just the only way I know how to say it. I mean, there's tracks that you may not necessarily like it and you can find a way to drive there. I think for me, a place like Malaysia used to come to mind. I could drive well there, but I hated it really. Maybe now France. I don't really like France, but I can drive reasonably well there. But if you don't love Monaco, I don't really think you're going to find a way to drive faster. You just have to embrace how tight this track is. You have to embrace the challenge. Another thing is you have to learn how to drive rhythm here. There's markers here, but a better way to drive, because the markers come up so fast, the guardrail, the corners are hiding from you, and you have to just learn how to know where the corners are. And so if you can learn to drive by rhythm, if you can just learn to drive by timing, that I know I've been going down this straightaway this long, and that means I need to brake now. And, the moment I hear the engine wind out in this gear is the moment I need to make this turn, you're going to be good. Like, you take a place like this, you just have to take and rhythm drive the car because you can't really see where you're going, and that makes it so difficult. And another thing we need to talk about here is track limits. The FIA rule is that you have to have 2 tires inside the verge line, which are hard to see at Monaco if they're existent. But there's 2 white lines that should mark the track. And you have to have 2 tires inside those verge lines at all times. The game has strict and regular. Also, there's race director's notes for an F1 race where sometimes the director may give you, you can use no limits here, you can use all to curb there, whatever. But at this track, we really need to talk about the fact that, as we go through, we'll talk about strict versus regular, but that's the rule. All right,
All right, so I'm going to show you the turn by turn now. So I want to start out with the front stretch. As you're coming down the front straightaway, there's 2 bridges. The second one's off in the distance. I use the first one, which is kind of hiding behind these start lights here, as like a way to not get lost and just forget my markers. So I know when I see this, I need to start looking for my next marker, which is that second bridge. And I'm going to start hard braking at that second bridge. Now, this is where I need to talk about strict versus regular corner cutting stringency. Strict, of course, is just what it sounds like. Very strict. You must have 2 tires on the track within the verge lines all the time. If you're using regular corner cutting stringency, which is what I was doing in this particular race, you can pretty much start your right turn right about here, or just briefly momentarily after it. If you're a strict corner cutting guy, if you're a purist, notice that the track goes left a lot here. This guardrail hooks around, and so it's going to be tempting to try to straight line off that guardrail. But like several other spots at Monaco, that's deceptive. You want to kind of hug around the guardrail just momentarily and then cut your hard right. And you'll need to be a little bit slower as well if you're a strict corner cutting guy. Now, this is regular corner cutting, and basically with regular corner cutting, as long as you have tires on the curb, it lets you have it. If you're strict, then you better have 2 tires on the black on the left side of that curb. Either way, you want to have your eyes looking up the hill. Be aware that you may very well lose your traction going up this hill, especially in this condition as I was in the rain. In this condition, this was before the rain, and it was just starting to sprinkle. Going up that hill is just a matter of it kind of wiggles and all that. If you're side by side, I mean, one of you is probably going to lose a wing, honestly. And there's a UBS bridge here. You use that to basically not get lost, because it can be so mesmerizing to crest this hill, the world falls away, and either you'll panic and slam on brakes or you'll think you can keep on going, and either way just results in something bad. I do not, if I'm in a slow car, like if I'm doing something just messing around in time trial mode, I might brake at that bridge and slow down a lot more. If you're in a classic car, this is a slow turn. If you're in a newer car, this is a fast turn. So you'll brake at this crosswalk, actually. So you go under the bridge, and then very momentarily afterwards, after you come out, there's this crosswalk. And just as I go over the crosswalk, I brake and start my turn in, holding about mid-track most of the way around. If I get it just right, I'll be able to pull it briefly to the inside of the track. And it's a really fun corner when you get it right. I mean, it feels spectacular when you nail this, but it is so hard to nail it. Excuse me. Once I come around the corner, there's a brief moment where the track gets straight as you come into Casino Square. And about halfway down this advertisement on the left, or for me, it's just kind of a timing thing. Like I get the wheel for a moment back straight, and then I brake and I start my right-hand turn. You want to hug this wall on the right, basically as tight as you're comfortable, maybe even a little tighter than you're comfortable. As tight as you can until you bang a wing and then keep it a little bit off of that. There is a F1 game bump, which is as you start down this hill, the game just doesn't seem to make a nice transition downhill sometimes, and there'll be a nice little bump there that'll catch you. It is there, so you want the wheel straight at that point if you can. There is also, that I don't have pictured, a roundabout in real life. If you go watch Coming Out of Casino Square in real life, there is a roundabout that the cars have to go hard track right to go around. And there's a little bit of a bump there in the game, but honestly, you could probably drive over it. I don't, just because it is the one spot I'll decide to be a purist, even though I'd use regular track limits. Sue me. But here it is not marked a roundabout. I'm on the right because I'm going around a roundabout, and I'm going to be trying to move the car back left and get it parallel to the guardrail. And here just marks basically where I start my braking. All right. So I'm moving left, and then it's going to be really, really tricky because I need to kind of get parallel with that guardrail and tight to it as I go into this braking zone. And all I can really say is that there's things you use for your marker. For one, there's these yellow posts in the fence, but if you're alongside those before you brake, you're too late. So you might use like your depth perception to kind of get a distance that you eyeball and say, okay, when I'm this far from the yellow, I brake. There's also these little marks in the wall, and there's more down the wall that just due to the coloring you can't really see, but there is like this white paint on the guardrails to help you see where to brake. Again, here I'm a little bit wide. What you really want to be is nice and tight to that guardrail on the right, and you got to hold to that guardrail a little longer than you think. Your instinct is usually to try to let go of the wheel and let the car go down the next straightaway, but you don't have a straightaway here, really. And so you want to hold nice, hard to the right, and see, even though now I'm technically out of the corner, I'm still turning right. I mean, you have to turn right for a long time. Part of the reason I'm turned right is because I was too wide. And there's like a line you can draw between the widest part of that guardrail on the right behind us now and this left-hand spot where the guardrail is also furthest right there. And if you can draw a straight line like across a trajectory here as much as you can, you're going to be in good shape. Now, I've mentioned before, I drive this track much through rhythm. And so one thing is that basically as I go by this guardrail, I'm going to shift into third gear very briefly before I get hard on the brakes. And this is about where I brake. I don't really have a marker I use. There's not really a 50 board or a line on the track or anything I use. For me, it's very much rhythm. Third gear, brake. And notice that ahead there's these green marks on the pavement. If your right front tire doesn't go over those green marks on the pavement, you are going to be too tight in this hairpin. This is where I know guys who are on controllers talk about it's like near impossible to make this. I've never driven this game with a controller, to be perfectly honest with you. I've always used my Thrustmaster TMX wheel. I will say, though, if you get in tight no matter what, it's going to bind you up. Also, another thing about this corner is for a couple of seconds, it feels like, and it feels like an eternity in this game when you're not on the gas. But you need to stay off the gas for a long time going around this hairpin. You may also notice that if you follow the verge line over here, the verge line straightens up right as you come in. Sometimes you can widen this turn just a little bit by just bumping the wheel ever so slightly right as you come into this hairpin, about where I'm at now. Instead of trying to stay straight or trying to turn left, maybe you just briefly bump the wheel just a little bit to the right to get closer to that guardrail and widen the Lowe's hairpin, whatever this thing's called. Many years ago, it was called the Lowe's hairpin. And my right front tire will pass over that green mark and then start hooking around. I always use some curb. In this case, I was on top of the curb, but I've got my tires still on the track. That should still technically be within limits. It's going to be darned close, though. I mean, this might get called, and honestly, if it got called, I might not be able to argue it. But this is the tightest you can go, no matter what. If you're any tighter than this, even on regular corner cutting stringency, you're not really helping your case, honestly. You're going to drive off the curb and get into a lot of trouble. So you want to make sure that you hold as you can see here, the wheel is upside down. I mean, I've got this thing in full lock, and I'm going to have it in full lock until I can see down the next brief straightaway, basically. You will use a lot of track on exit, and like I said, what I think you'll find if you're struggling there is tell yourself to stay out of the gas longer than you think you should have to and see what happens. You will bring it back into the left-hand lane, and you start aiming for this curb on the right side, and I climb on that curb. I have, by the very basic rules, unless they have like a race director's notes or something, I am within track limits here. This is not necessarily the line that most of the real drivers use. You'd probably bottom out here, but I use it. Climb up on that little sidewalk, and I'm already at this point, my eyes are starting to look towards this little opening in the fence marked by orange guardrail. I also use that same orange guardrail as my brake and turn marker for the last right-hander of this really super slow section of track where we will finally take a breather momentarily before we have to deal with a tunnel. You want to stay nice and tight to that guardrail. Now, this is kind of an oxymoron. In track driving, sometimes you want to like extend your straightaway by turning late. And so if you're still turning by the time, and you can't see it here because street circuits are all blind, but like let's imagine the track way down here, like behind this Marshall. If you're still trying to turn the wheel right very hard by the time you get there, you're not going to be able to get the gas, and you're going to be slowing the car down, and the people behind you are just going to catch you. So you want to be able to find a late turn-in line that allows you to get close to this guardrail while getting the car nice and straight beside the left-hand guardrail as soon as possible and wide open throttle into the tunnel. The only thing I can really say about the tunnel, a very fast, very fun turn, but one that will catch you out. This thing will make you want to lean in really early, and then you're going to hit a guardrail on one side of the track or the other. What I will say is that when you see this red mark at the apex, I would say, when you see that coming through the tunnel, then you can turn. So here we are again. We're at the 100 mark, and there's a lot of ways to know when to brake. And no matter what I'm driving, and maybe if it's raining, I back it up a little bit, but classic car, new car, whatever, they all seem to brake at the same point here. There's three ways to know where to brake. One is right as you pass the 100. The second is as this lane marker ends. The third, the one I basically use, is as soon as I'm able to get straight and point it down the hill, brake hard. If I don't use that, I use the 100 to kind of know like where that spot is coming as I come to it, and then as soon as I get to it, downhill, brake. Now, this is another spot if you're a strict corner cutting guy or if you're a regular corner cutting guy. There's a couple of different ways you may want to mark this. You're going to use the same markers, but it's like how late you turn and whatnot is going to differ. I start using my instinct, my intuition is I want to start turning earlier, but that's wrong. I have to force myself to kind of stay out until I'm beside the Pirelli boards for a few laps until I kind of develop a rhythm. So once I'm beside these Pirelli boards, then I'll turn left. It's also, at Monaco, we know we have to get very close to the guardrail, but we also cannot allow ourselves to hook the left rear tire. Remember on the F1 car, the rear tires are wider than the front, and it's very easy to hook the tire on the guardrail and spin the car out, and there are dozens of videos of that out there in the world from this video game. So you want to turn, I would say if you're a regular corner cutting stringency, you're probably turning, say, right here. But if you're strict, you're going to turn a little later, a little slower, and hold it and get a different line coming in here. Now, this is regular corner cutting, lets you have it. I am violating track limits because, look, I mean, there's clearly red curb to the left of all of my tires. I'm doing that to try to get the car pointed straight down the straightaway as early as I can and not get out here. If you're out here, by the way, no matter what, you're pretty much wrong. And this is a corner that rewards slowing down earlier to get a good run out later. If you go through this corner too fast, what you're going to find happening is you're going to be driving at these Pirelli tires over here. Another thing is if you come in too fast, you could hook this little guardrail. And this is what I mean. This is where if you slow down earlier about where the car is now is where you're going to get rewarded. Notice I've got the car still hugging the curb. And even on strict corner cutting stringency, I would say you want to kind of drive over this curb a little bit on the right. If you slow down enough early, you're going to already be looking down this straightaway and looking for a fast line into the next corner. Well, not the fast line to the next corner, but you will be looking down straightaway. If you came through this corner too hot, your concern is keeping it out of the tire barrier and out of the guardrail. And the guy who's already back here worried about getting down the straightaway is going to be way faster than anybody worried about hitting these tires. If you set it up right, you're not worried about these tires or even that guardrail. Now, this is a spot where my markers, this is a spot where I really have to drive by rhythm. The only marker here you consistently see is that 50 in defense. Now, at this time, I found the time it was drizzling rain, and you could really see this nice little white line in the track, which kind of half marks a lane marker. This is like the perfect brake marker for this car for me. Notice I'm coming to it, I'm wide open throttle, and you would see that change right there. I don't really use that lane marker so much. What I do use is I have a depth perception thing. When I see that 50, when I'm just before the 50, I brake hard, and just briefly after I pass the 50, I release the brake and turn into the next corner. And I'll show you what I mean. Like, here's a different time of day, and notice the lane markers are harder to see. Now, the reason you can actually see them, honestly, is because I stopped the video. If you were going full speed, you would have, by the time you saw those markers, it would have been too late, and you would have been into a fence. Now, it is possible to use that left-hand curb. I will say this is a corner that it's very luring to turn in early, and when you turn in early, it's very likely you bash your front wing into a guardrail, and that's something obviously we don't like. So I will say though, as I get into a really good rhythm in a race, I find myself hitting that left-hand curb a lot, and most of the time not hitting the wing. It's just a weird thing. It's like once I fall in that rhythm, I'm good. I don't know. It's just weird. And for me, it's tempting to hold that wheel angle and try to stay tight to that guardrail on the left, and that is wrong. You need to bring the car out over these stripes to the right guardrail. You could even be a little farther right than I am. And this is one of my favorite sections of this track. I mean, there's footage of video. Go look up the swimming pool chicane, and there is sensational video. You'll have a camera guy like right there recording cars in real life just flying through here. And you want to thread this needle, basically. You want to be on that curb right there, which I'm not. And you'll probably just have two wheels on the track and kind of bounce over this curb. And what you're going to be looking for is to kind of wind out sixth gear down this straightaway. And here is the next marker. 2 over the curb is fine. Even on strict corner cutting stringency, you should be allowed 2 curbs or 2 tires over the curb. And what you basically want to do is the very moment you get straight on this next straightaway, and you'll have a spot where it's also a sound thing in your rhythm, where you have to note that you're right on the rev limiter. And then when you get there, you hit the brakes. All I can say is it's somewhere around in here. There's also very hard to use. There's these little white markers in the fence. They may be handy if you're taking a slow lap to find some rhythm. So I'm about to turn here. It's just kind of rhythm again. And I'm turning a little early again because I'm on regular corner cutting stringency. And this is the spot where it really regular will get you so much more time over strict. Because I am just going to flat drive over this turtle curb, which is what the yellow thing is called. Basically, as long as you have your right-hand tires on that red patch on regular, it lets you have it. If you're on strict, you're going to have to turn sharper, be slower, and keep your your 2 right tires are going to have to stay on that black pavement. You will carry the car out to the wide. This is a spot that the car really wants to get loose and suck you into that right-hand guardrail. And I don't really have a good marker for this next one other than basically I get into 5th gear, I stay there for a moment, I use my depth perception against this bridge, and I brake. Now, it's very tempting at times just to get caught out. If you get out of rhythm, it's going to be so tempting to say, ooh, look, there's the end of the guardrail, but don't let it fool you. You want to kind of stay on a trajectory where the left side tires go, I wouldn't say you need to be within inches of that guardrail, but you need to be pretty close to it. And you're kind of drawing a straight line across here. Because that guardrail continues right. So if you turn right too early, you're going to be messed up. And that factor makes it so that you can drive into this corner deeper than you may initially think. And this is where you will be when you get to the end of what looks like the end of the guardrail in the last shot. But, you know, what you really want to do is have a timing and a rhythm. And it's so hard. Like I said, there's no visual reference. But what you really want is a nice rhythm that will let you make a nice, sharp right-hand turn that brings you close to that guardrail right there. As you come out of that last corner, there is a orange marker on the left again. We used one of those earlier. You want to get nice and close to that. And right as you pass it is where you're going to brake and steer into our next mark. And you see we're very slow, 68 miles per hour. We're not quite wide open throttle. And it's going to be, if you have traction control on, it's very possible to get to wide open throttle. But if not, it's going to be just a very rare moment and probably on fresh tires when you do get it. There is a little cone on the fence. You want to basically bring 4 tires over this spot. There's no track limits. That's not a curb. You basically just don't hit the guardrail. The guardrail is the natural limit of the track. And about the time you get here, you're looking for a nice line down the straightaway. The DRS is very, very hard to hit on time if you're happening to using that. So just be aware of where it's at. And it's very possible to use this curb right here. And just know if you hit that left-hand curb and it just kind of bounces the car a little bit and then you land and you're flying down the straightaway right afterwards, just know you nailed that last turn when you do that. Tough to do, but very rewarding when you do. And that'll have you coming down the straightaway. Thank you for watching. Hope this helped.
All right, now for a fast commentary. This is going to be quick. First bridge, second bridge, brake, 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 brake. Over the curbs. Now, thread the needle up here. We're going to look for that white bridge on the horizon. There's the bridge. We go under it. 1 crosswalk, 2 crosswalk, bam. Brake, around to the middle. Get nice and straight, momentarily straight. Turn, turn. Let it track out. Get to the bridge, under the bridge. Looking for the mark in the wall. Brake, hold right, hold right, hold right. Thread the needle. Rhythm, brake. Hold nice and tight. A little bit of gas, but not too much. Get to the curb. Orange mark in the wall. Brake, brake. All right, now looking down straightaway. Get straight, get straight. Now looking for that red mark in the tunnel. It's coming up. There it is. Lightly turn in. Let's get to the, looking for a downhill and brake. Downhill, brake, 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 brake. Pearly sign turn. Nice and slow early, so we weren't worried about that pearly sign. Now it's just going to be a quick rhythm. Brush and brake. Brush, brake. Go. Around the corner, thread the needle, curb, curb, straight, brake, 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 curb, curb, index off the bridge. Timing, brake, 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 brake. Look for the next turn, there it is. Get to the guardrail, turn late, looking down the straightaway, and that's a lap. Now I'll give you an uninterrupted lap. Please leave a like if you feel so inclined.
Okay, be careful on those slicks. These conditions are making the line a bit greasy, but we're still nowhere near the changeover point. This rain is going to keep getting heavier for the next